The Great Egg Harbor Crossing rebuild is a rebuild of 1.3 miles of the 138 kV transmission line that comes out of Beal England Power Plant to Lewis Substation. This project was identified back in 2015 as an age and condition project. Foundations were severely deteriorated. Life expectancy of this line has been exceeded. So a project was initiated to rebuild 8 towers, 5 in the water and 3 on land. This is the only project where we physically have towers in the water.
This project is a reliability project that's helping us with resiliency, hardening of our equipment.
We feel that we have partnered with a great contractor, South State, to really execute this plan safely in a reliable way and get it done on time.
We plan our work based on the conditions that we have, depending on weather, wind, and tides. All the cofferdams will be installed prior to any construction. The reason for that is that we need to fit that type of work within the fish restrictions.
State agencies and local agencies have put restrictions on when we can do in-water work for this project from September 1st to December.
Once the cofferdams are installed, the construction activities will begin. Plan to use a long-reach excavator to excavate the soil. The new foundations will go down approximately 5 feet below the mudline.
It took 4 years to get to this point, to the construction of it, and we're planning on getting this project completed and in service in December of 2020.
We just want to continue to make sure our customers have the service that they deserve.
As you can see behind me, we've divided our crew into 2 teams. We have a crane team and an excavator team. The crane team is currently located at Tower 80, where they're installing the 5th and final cofferdam. Behind me, they're driving sheets. The false work has been installed earlier this week. We have the pin piles located in the proper positions and drive frame installed. The excavator team, which is currently located at Tower 81, is finishing up the excavation. The final load will be moving out today, and from there we'll stone the bottom. The crane barge, once completed, the final cofferdam will be retooling and moving on to installing work platforms located at Towers 78, 79, and 80. And the excavator barge will continue to follow the crane barge, excavating the cofferdams that are completed. They will begin installing the foundation piles. They're going to move to Tower 81 first. The piles are in 2 halves with a quick connect splice in the middle. The bottoms will be vibrated in with vibratory hammer. The tops will be spliced on, and then the tops will be driven with a diesel hammer.
This is a 138,000 volt path that travels north to south from Cape May County up into Atlantic County. This is our way of connecting our customers from Cape May County to the customers in Atlantic and Ocean counties. We ended up with a very solid contractor in South State. They've been doing a great job. Right now they're about 2.5 weeks ahead of schedule.
Once the piles are driven to the proper capacities, we will cut them to elevation, install the pile cages and pour the piles. Then they'll move to the next location and do the same thing there. We will return to the foundation to install the pile caps after all the piles are driven.
So the balance of the project will be to finish up. We've got the cofferdams in place, we've got some of the foundations in place. The balance of the project will be to finish up the foundations, set the structures. That'll all be done from the barges. Then we'll bring in a helicopter to pull the conductors through.
We have a foundation that is capable of withstanding, basically anything that the environment could throw at it. So we can take erosion, there can be hurricane force winds and things like that, and those structures should stay standing. You basically got yourself, 3 major components of these foundation types. You got your driven piles, you got your pile cap, and then you got your stem. And that all works in conjunction, tying together, dispersing the load, and then you've got all the hydrostatic loading from the river. You've got additional load that we have applied to the structures themselves, and then obviously the conductor adds some weight and wind loading and things like that. So they're all a similar type, but the amount of piles and the depth of the piles depends on soil types, the structure types, etc. Generally, you've got about a 95-foot embedment depth for these steel piles, and basically it's just a metal pipe, drive it right into the ground, fill it with rebar, and then fill that with concrete. So you got a pretty hefty base, and you're going to have all of those arrays tied together by another layer of rebar that runs through. The rebar comes out of the pipe piles, you run rebar horizontally through it, tie them all together, and then that's all encompassed within the pile cap. That's all at the level of the mud line. So the base of the river is going to be at the top of your cap. So your cap's actually below the mud line. And then you're going to have your stem and the pier that the structure is actually going to sit on. That is going to be sticking up through the river itself and then be above the mean high tide level. It's difficult to predict, but we designed for 26 feet of scour, which basically means that we could have 26 feet of erosion and we would still be okay just based around the design that we have. We have anchor bolt cages that the structure sets on, and so that's going to be set within the concrete pier. There's going to be rebar tying everything together, and then your structure bolts directly to that, which stick out at the top of the concrete a little bit. Basically, you just got a plate that bolts to another plate, and then all of these structures are ready to go. We've had a great team to support us, and it's kind of a once-in-a-lifetime project when you're looking at all these river crossing structures, and not just crossing, but actually in water foundations and structures themselves.
So, Doug, so it looks like you reached another milestone, completing the pile driving for 78. You're on to 82.
Yeah, that's correct. We completed driving all the piles at 78. And then from there, we're going to stay at 78, forming footing, and start putting rebar in. The other crew, which has the crane barge, has moved over to Tower 82. And then we're going to be working on driving all the bottom. And then we'll splice and then start driving all the top. So we're doing great. We're in good shape. We're looking at trying to start pouring the footing. We're going to pour 78 followed by 79 back to back. Right now, it'll take the week of April 13th.
So this was the first month that we began doing some of the land-based work here for Towers 83 and 84 within the existing former BL England station. We started first by installing the soil and erosion controls. We have silt sock around the locations where the drilling occurred. And then we installed the environmental matting at Tower 83. All that went very well. The scope of the work that they performed, including installing the caisson, drilling foundation piers, and tying the rebar cage, installing the rebar cage and the anchor bolts, and pouring the foundation pier. All that work for the two towers took them approximately 2 weeks. We finished driving all the piles at all 5 water-based tower locations. All pile cages have been installed and all piles have been poured, so that's a big milestone for us to complete. We poured our first pile cap, which was at Tower 78. That was the largest pour to date. I believe that was approximately 180 cubic yards. Took 3 barges to push that quantity of concrete out to the location. We were successful in getting that all done within one tide. The next step to pour at Tower 78 will be for the column.
Today was the last major pour for Tower 81 pile cap foundation. We had 21 concrete trucks transporting 231 cubic yards of concrete on 5 barges with 40 buckets.
For the Great Egg Harbor Crossing project, we had pretty extensive permitting, which included permitting with the Army Corps of Engineers, the New Jersey DEP, and the Soil Conservation District. As part of our DEP permitting, we had to coordinate with the Endangered and Non-Game Species Office program because we have several osprey nests on the existing structures as well as several osprey nests on platforms throughout the bay. At the beginning of the project, we received permitting from the agencies to remove the existing osprey nests after nesting season and build additional platforms in the marsh, hoping that those ospreys that were nesting on the existing structures would relocate to the platforms. This year, on 3 of our structures, ospreys re-nested. So we had an environmental monitor monitoring them during construction. Several of the things they looked for were nest building activity, if they were disturbed by construction activities, and when they were disturbed by activities, how long they stayed away from the nests. We had to remove one of the nests early in the season to try and avoid them having a successful nesting, avoid having the eggs in that nest. And that nest was not rebuilt. 2 of the other nests, one of them was successful and had eggs, of which one egg hatched to a successful chick. Pretty challenging with the construction activities in addition to the regular disturbance in that waterway during the season. There's a lot of activity between the wave runners and boating. So far it looks like we'll have one successful chick. Fingers crossed.
The completion of civil work on the 5 water-based foundations in August was accomplished on schedule. We had a brief stand down and started to mobilize for the next phase of water-based work. As the mandatory fish window opened on September 1st, the removal of the cofferdam sheet piles was accomplished with 1 barge crane, and the erecting of new monopole towers was accomplished with another larger barge crane. 2 crews and high-reach bucket trucks assisted the assembly at 200 feet above the water. At the same time, different crews laid mats and mobilized to work at Tower 77 land-based foundation. A 10-foot wide hole was bored to over 60 feet, and smooth wall casing was installed. A rebar cage was constructed in 2 pieces to allow clearance under the conductor phases and inserted vertically, then attached with rebar connectors and lowered into place. 20 truckloads of concrete were used to fill the foundation as the groundwater was removed into storage. The bulk cage was set in place, and this tower will be erected as soon as we get the outage on October 2nd. We are looking to accomplish all the conductor and OPGW work in the next 6 weeks. Part of this work will include the use of helicopters. With the completion of the last 2 structures dependent upon the scheduled early October outage, work proceeded at a 7-day-a-week schedule. The balance of the northernmost structure, number 77, was set directly in between the existing phases of conductor. On the south end, existing conductor had to be removed to make way for the new tower number 84. New higher capacity fiber optic ground wire replaced both runs between Beale England substation and extended all the way to Skullville substation. The helicopter line crews threaded the initial rope through the running blocks on the new monopole structures and also installed running blocks on the ladder towers to facilitate the removal of the old conductor for placement into recycling containers. Crews worked from both the ground and the air to attain proper sag, remove the running blocks, and clip the conductors into permanent place. Crews and equipment were deployed by way of helicopters for the 5 water-based towers. High-reach bucket trucks completed the others from the ground and matted areas. After the final connections are completed, the 2 138 kV circuits will be ready to return to service.
This project was a 1590 wire pull upgrade from 138 to 230. We did basically 7 spans, pretty much. Changed out lattice structures to a monopole structure across the bay. Pulled a double circuit with OPGW on a double circuit on an OPGW. Installed bird diverters with a helicopter and a bicycle. And then we did a tower maintenance structure in the wetlands across there from Stall Sub to Beale England Sub. We have some bird diverters left to install.
The tidal marsh and surrounding habitats near the Great Egg Harbor Crossing project are home to many species of breeding and migrating birds. We installed bird diverters to increase visibility of the lines to birds.
I laid it out, planted it. There's a lot of planning, a lot of moving parts, a lot of people involved, a lot of coordination. And it was a pretty good project, very well. It was really nice to work with everybody.
Once they were able to get the existing conductor off the existing towers, we were able to get back to work and begin the demolition of the water-based towers. We utilized the same crane that we used setting the new towers that was already on the barge out there. The additional equipment we brought out was a 40-ton boom truck with a man basket we used in order to gain access to the top of the existing towers for rigging purposes. So we walked that on and we were able to rig the towers with the large crane we already had out there. We were able to pick the tower in one section, fly it over to a material barge and section it from the bottom to the top. We were able to complete the demolition of 1 steel lattice tower in a day. Now we're gearing up, getting ready to demo the concrete bases. We brought the barge in that had the steel and dumpsters. They're getting offloaded. We also brought the barge back in that had the boom truck on. That's getting walked off. We're going to walk an excavator onto that material barge. We're going to rig the ring in sections with the crane, demo it from the pile caps using the excavator. There's 4 caps on each tower. and from there we're going to attempt to pull the existing piles out using the crane. 4 of the towers out there have existing timber dolphin pile icebreakers. Tower 78, we were able to successfully pull those timber piles out with the crane that we have out there. So hopefully we have the same luck of trying to pull the piles out for the tower foundations. We need to get the matting out, and from there we need to restore per the plan that IECON's putting together. But we'll be here to the very end. Restoration is the last piece of everything.
This structure replacement project came with the expected challenges of weather and doing construction work on the water. During the 16th month construction cycle, timing and scheduling had to coincide with 2 windows of environmental restrictions, with the final phase falling into a window of reduced demand in which to perform the outage and changeover of conductors. As this project progressed, we faced some added complexities, like having to add galvanizing to the bolt cages, working during the COVID-19 pandemic, and extending an upgraded optical ground wire all the way to Skull Substation. Through it all, the schedule was maintained and power was restored to both circuits on November 5th. Some of the many advantages as a result of this project include visual aesthetics, the hardening of the system with a 120 mile/hour wind rating, and upgraded power, communications, and monitoring capabilities.